Hi, welcome to Wicked Politics. Adam Bierman here with Bob Carson. Before we go any further, we do like what you hear on this podcast about politics, Wicked Politics. You can check out my pages, Breezing with Bierman, on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, soon probably Spotify. On my YouTube page, you can see all my interviews, all my happenings, my scenes, going to sporting events, talking to politicians, sports stars, not strippers. And I think I just talked to a couple months ago one of the last surviving French resistance fighters. He's like 100 years old now. Quite interesting. And now we have Bob Carson. What about you, Bob?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here on Wicked Politics. Our shows are far and few between every 2 weeks, but we're getting some buzz. We're generating some reactions here. We're getting some good online discussions and some people that are contacting us. I'm happy to be here. I'm grateful to be alive. You can, just if anybody wants to get in touch with me, Instagram.com/Bob Carson MMA. I'm not on there much. Also, Facebook.com/Bob Carson MMA. I'm ready to go right into it, man.
Well, I just want to say, what is this, like our fifth one, or I'm not sure.
Yeah,
The fifth,
I think
fifth.
so.
Yeah, we got, again, small but growing. I got 15 responses to our last podcast. I mean, people took the time to write back we talked about immigration, elections, whatever else we talked about. So that was, somewhat inspiring to keep going, little victories. I know you have a lot,
Yeah, it
you want
is.
to, oh, go on.
It is, and I actually got the attention of an author that I want to talk to you about off air. He's a self-help author, somebody who wants to come on the show. So, presumably in the next couple of weeks or so, we should have some guests here again.
Okay, does he have a following? Anyway, anyone who wants to come on, but hopefully he has at least we'll promote if he does come on. And
Yes.
we all have email lists, social media lists, whatever list, whatever demographic we're trying to get. I just got to tell you, I've had a crazy day, Bob. And
Me
today,
too.
after this, I'm going to be on a local political podcast, and then we have local school board insanity. The culture wars are coming through Princeton, so I'm so busy. But anyway, I'm glad to be talking to you, and I want you to go first. I know you have things you want to talk about.
Yeah, well, if it's any consolation to you, I've had a crazy day as well. So, something in the air today. It's not just you, and my day is going to get hectic, but it's getting better. So, I wanted to start off. There's a lot we really have to talk. A lot has transpired since our last edition of Wicked Politics. One of which at this point is the migrants debate, the immigration debate, whatever you want to call it. I go back. I've been following politics for a long time, what I consider to be a long time. And during the Bush administration, it was the immigration debate. We can go back to the Reagan administration, the nationalization of immigrants, and now it's the migration or migrants debate. And basically, this is always a hot button issue. Typically, we see with Democrats and Republicans and Hispanics and whatnot, and very, very interesting issue. So basically, in a nutshell, in a layman's term, what's happening is this started with Governor Greg Abbott, or arguably Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, was responding to Mayor Eric Adams when Adams welcomed the immigrants, saying that in New York City would take them in. And Abbott and some other Republican governors in red states have bussed these migrants to New York City, to Denver, to, I believe, Seattle, that area, Democratic states, so-called sanctuary cities, self-sanctuary cities. And we've seen a lot of debate as far as whether these local governments are equipped financially to care for these migrants who have sought asylum under Title 42. Title 42, which actually was just expired and allowed for ICE to strictly deny entry to migrants on the basis of COVID, on the basis of public health. And we saw a lot of migrants go to the border and get turned back. And now there's Title 8, which allows migrants to seek asylum here in the United States. And this is going back into effect now. And we can have an entire show based on this. But basically, Mayor Adams is spending $1 billion to try to house these migrants. 67,000 migrants have went to New York City since this all started. and he's running out of places to keep them. He tried hotels, he tried parking lots, he tried tents. Now they're trying a gymnasium, whatnot. And Adams is like, listen, what do you want me to do? I need money from the federal government. Where do you want me to house these people? And this just goes back to the debate. I'll tell you my opinion on this debate as an independent. I think for me personally, this doesn't affect me. I don't hear people where I'm at in my walk of life talking about how migrants are draining the system, how so-called illegal immigrants or illegal aliens, however you want to depict them, are a dredge in our society and whatnot. I don't see it. I see immigrants, migrants all day long in my nature of the work. I do believe that they're a plus to society. However, I am sympathetic to, depending upon where you are in this country, it is a crisis. And if you go to Republican states, border states, they are being overrun by migrants. They're being overrun by cartel activity. There's no question about that. And they need border security. So it is an issue in Arizona, in Texas, all along the border. I can see that. In fact, we've seen several Republican governors declare states of emergency because of these conditions, and they don't know what else to do. So this is a legit issue, obviously, but I don't really think that these people are a detriment to society. However, I am for border security. The Republicans want to impeach President Biden for neglecting his constitutional duty to secure the border. I don't think it's an open border as they say it is. I don't think, in fact, the Biden administration has just implemented new rules on border enforcement. But I do think the emphasis hasn't been totally on border security since the Biden administration has taken over. In my opinion, we can't have a secure enough a border. We need to secure a border. I think that's common sense. And I don't think the Democrats really care. I think the Democrats want these people to come over and arguably vote Democratic and turn America more into a melting pot. But this is an interesting an issue. It is interesting to see what's going to happen in New York City, how they're going to deal with this and how they've dealt with this. You've got several protests, several migrant activist groups that have been protesting the conditions that we're housing these migrants in. I hear it all day long on talk radio how these migrants have it easy in hotels. They're drinking cerveza, smoking weed, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure there's some truth to that, but it's a political football that regardless, and I'll let you speak here. I know I've talked a lot. There's no easy solution to this. If you're an illegal immigrant and you've been convicted of a felony, you should be deported, but it's not that simple logistically. The Bush administration signed legislation making it easier to get citizenship, but there's still a huge backlog of people that are trying to get into the United States. It's a very, very complicated issue. However, I think in the age of fentanyl, the age of terrorism, we need to do more to secure our border. And that's one area where I agreed with Trump on. So that's my 2 cents, and I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Well, there's a lot to say. I can't process everything you said. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I'm going to go back in the macro though. Reagan, I remember Reagan when it was less contentious, and I think there's a little xenophobia. Reagan gave amnesty in in 87 to 3.7 million immigrants, and he recognized, I think the Chamber of Commerce at that time too, that they wanted that labor. Some of it did depress native-born Americans from getting jobs, especially in construction and trades. But I have to put this in the map. I think I have to blame more the Republicans though than the Democrats. There was an excellent chance for common sense, comprehensive reform under Obama. And it was Obama, who was the deporter in chief. I think he really wanted to show Republicans he was serious, and they and a lot of Republicans went with it. Like people already lived here for a period of time would have to pay a fine, or maybe they have to go home again. The guest worker program, which Texas used to always have, would come back, but even bigger. So you could have seasonal workers and everything. And Republicans went for it too, and it seemed like we're going to have comprehensive, common sense immigration reform with controls, and so and then with money put into the system to process these immigrants. And it what happened was, in my opinion, was talk radio, the more the right wing, scared a lot of Republican congressmen out of it, and ever since then, it's a symptom. Now we're treating symptoms. And I do have I understand, I have complete empathy and sympathy, and they're right. On the border, they're being overrun. The federal government should have taken this over a long time ago for various reasons, because of polarization. It shouldn't be left to a patchwork of court rulings, state rulings, states playing catch up, basically, to try to deal with this problem. And it's gotten too polarized. And I think, unfortunately, the Republican side was for it, but they're afraid they might lose. Some of the people in more red states, Oklahoma and everything, will lose elections. I do know one story, and I forget the congressman's name from Oklahoma. He was going to vote for it. He said it's common sense. He says, he also said it showed empathy so they could reunite immigrants who've been separated and everything. And then the Rush Limbaughs of the world went crazy on him, just crazy. So yeah, we're treating the symptom. We're not dealing with the problem. And yeah, and Democrats, we have that left-wing Democratic Party, which Biden has to listen to, who want to, have to say kumbaya and just let everyone in. It makes no sense, though. No sense. I mean, again, the infrastructure. I mean, what's happening in New York already happened in El Paso, already happened in Douglas, Arizona. They're overrun. And how many problems can you take? It's just so damn polarized, and it's unneeded. We need immigrants. And they refresh and renew this country. And half the immigrants still don't come over the border. They come with legal tourist visas, and they just never leave. And everything. But at the same time, it should be regulated. I like what we did in New Jersey was somewhat, I think, if it's still in effect, a win-win. We gave licenses to illegal immigrants. So made money for the state treasury, made money for the DMV, and then they got driving lessons so they could drive more safely because they're not leaving, and they're needed to work, especially in small businesses around here, and they could be more regulated. If there were criminals, if they've done things in the past or present, they could be sent home and stuff. And we need it. And it's mostly a Mexican problem. It's still mostly Mexican immigrants. And let's be honest, Mexico, Central America, they're happy. They didn't get in a way, it's a great American foreign policy to try to keep them, even though you could say that Honduras is having some trouble, so a failed city-state in some places. But all that money sent back to Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, that helps keep the lid on things. I think it would even be worse in those countries in terms of all-out rebellion. But yeah, it's a narco state. And unfortunately, as Americans, we help the narco state because we're the consumers. We have the money and we seem to dig the drugs. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, you're right, and you made a lot of good points, and I do think that there's a lot that Congress can do. We've moved significantly in terms of, where the Republicans were and where the Democrats were, back during the Bush administration. There's no now, like, arguably we've moved leftward on this issue. I do think that there's things that Congress can do, pass legislation to make it easier to become a citizen of the United States. My former roommate was in the process. He's been here for 10 years or 20 years, and he's just now getting his green card. And that kid, he's not a kid, he's my age. He's going through a lot. Take my word for it. It's a lot to become a citizen here. You have to have $5,000 in the bank at least. You have to have immunization, medical, all this, a litany of different things.
All these immigrants, they have their fake Social Security cards, so they put all that money into Social Security, and we get to use it. Yeah.
That's why I said earlier that I think they're a net benefit. There's something called the illegal surplus, which is people that have Social Security cards that work, that rack up money into the Social Security system and don't claim benefits. We also know that the government is more reliant on state and local taxes. And guess what? Who pays those taxes? It's people that have come here that have overstayed their work visas, people that we're talking about. So I think they're a net positive to our society. They work the jobs. They're hardworking people. However, that doesn't mean that we can welcome everyone. That doesn't mean that we don't need to secure our border.
And I agree.
And the gangs, the drug gangs that we see in New York City and elsewhere. So Congress has to do something about it, because this is not the same. Back when George W. Bush was in office, there was 14 illegal immigrants, 14 million. Now there's a lot more of that now. Okay, and they're a part of our society. And another 20, 30 years, maybe even before that, you're going to have Hispanics. They're going to become more significant portion of the population. They're not going anywhere.
No,
You know,
yeah,
that
and they've been here for 10 years, and even if you wanted to deport, you couldn't deport for it's a lot of and everything. And I agree with you though. And that's why we had comprehensive reform. I'm not a bleeding heart. We have to just open and no.
right.
I want a database. I want enough money so people can hear the amnesty cases and the refugee cases. I want people also deported when they're wrong. But I also want to see family reunification too. I hate when I see. I don't know how prevalent it is. I know what's happening in Princeton. My wife sees it. She works in their local hospital. A guy, they've lived here 20 years. They're illegal. They want to get citizenship. They can because of Congress and all the polarization on both sides. And
Yeah.
then the father makes one mistake. Maybe he drove a little bit drunk. The cop stopped him. He's deported. The family's broken. It's just heartbreaking. Hardworking guys. And,
Also, too, last word for me on this is there's certain ports on the border, certain parts of the border where you have judges, you have asylum judges that can make a ruling right there, and because are a lot of these people, are they really real? I mean, certainly in Mexico with the violence, but some of these people are taking advantage of the asylum laws and the asylum status, and they're just fleeing because everybody wants to come to America.
oh
Nobody's
yeah, yeah.
fleeing to Mexico. I mean, look, say what you want about America, but people are coming here for this reason. So there's a lot. The judges have to make the decisions. If you're not granted asylum, you're out. That's it. You
5 years you have
can't
to
come here.
wait,
You
I
can't
think
become,
now, right now. 5 years. And one
yeah,
thing
but yeah,
like you said about America too, of course, we're not blind to the warts of this country. I still think it's a great country, blah, blah, blah.
yeah,
But we see immigrant eyes. They are happy.
yeah,
It gives you a little, they are happy. They come here with immigrant eyes. They work very hard.
yeah,
They haven't become a couple generation. Wouldn't call myself a slacker, but they came here for a reason. They
yeah,
see opportunity and they're taking
yep,
advantage of it. A lot of them. I mean,
yep,
it's tough.
absolutely.
So God
Okay.
bless America. What other country would allow itself to become like the fourth largest Spanish speaking country in the world? I mean, do you see Japan doing that? South
No,
Korea,
certainly
Iran.
not. Certainly not China, where they have a Gestapo, and Russia, where Putin's political adversaries disappear. Look, that's what I want to move on, but this is what we take for granted in America is the freedoms that we have. That you can't do this in other countries. So you can't speak out in China or Russia. You can't have protests. You can't do this. You disappear. You don't have. Yeah, look what they did to Brittany Griner, that WNBA player. She was locked up for 10 years because she had a marijuana
We're
cartridge on her.
not. Yeah,
Eventually,
yeah, yeah.
if,
It's
if
bad.
she wasn't Brittany Griner, a famous NBA player, WNBA player, she probably would still be in jail in that gulag.
Yeah,
We
that
have,
final word on that. When because some people say you're really brave to speak up about this school board issue in Princeton, and I'm like, yeah, but and again, like maybe in some ways you are, but I look at it this way: no one's my job, my life, my health, my family. That's not on the table when I do that. It's not the biggest risk, and
yeah,
I don't really care. If I think I'm right about something, if someone doesn't want to be my friend, I can survive. But you want to go on? You want to talk about the budget? You said.
yeah, you've got the debt ceiling. This is interesting, and this is kind of almost political theater in a sense. But the debt ceiling, I don't know how many trillions of dollars we're in debt. Something like $31 trillion, and the debt
It
ceiling
becomes
is
like a
coming up.
mind-numbing number. I think people don't take it seriously after a while, unfortunately.
No, that's my point is that, they don't take it serious, but the government has to function, and you've got the Republicans in the House, the Freedom Caucus, they're demanding budget cuts. They're demanding cuts to SNAP, the one of the main welfare programs. They want to implement a welfare to work requirement, and they want to cut some of Biden's green energy projects and take spending back to 2022 levels. The Democrats, they're insisting that these programs are off limits, that we need to keep these programs. We can't cut, or we can't have cuts affect working class Americans. They wanted to raise taxes on the very wealthy, and it appears now that Biden is triangulating like Clinton did during the welfare reform, and he's dealing with Kevin McCarthy in the House to try to negotiate a deal to allow the government to raise its debt limits and fund the government. And this is coming at the behest of the Democrats in the House, like Bernie Sanders, Patty Murray, Elizabeth Warren, that want Biden to invoke the 14th Amendment. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but it appears that the Democrats and the Republicans are going to raise the debt ceiling and continue to function the government. Now, Ronald Reagan, when Reagan was in office, the House and the Senate, the government shut down, I think, 4 or 5 times. Okay,
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
even yeah, I mean, I was barely alive back then, but the Republicans have become like the party of the government shutdown. During the Newt Gingrich age, where we want to cut spending and we want to shut the government down. And even if the government does shut down, I don't know what that means. I mean, public parks, maybe Social Security
No,
checks.
it could mean a lot right now, but yeah, payment, and also it affects the economic markets too, right
Yeah,
now.
you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. But here's my take on it: is both parties don't care about this. Nobody cares about this. When Donald
Wait,
Trump was
you don't think the Freedom Caucus, whether you agree or not, you don't think they're really sincere? You think it's just political theater to
I
them?
think it's because where were they during the Bush administration? Where were they
Oh,
during
that's true.
where were they during Trump? When President Trump, even Bill O'Reilly, who's a close friend, acknowledges that President Trump spent. Well, I mean, yeah, he had COVID, but he spent a ridiculous amount of money on COVID relief, on stimulus packages, on a lot, and there wasn't any cutting on spending. It's like anytime the Republicans are in office, they spend like drunken sailors. When
Well,
they're out of office, they whine about cutting and cutting, and the Democrats don't care about spending. I don't think the average American cares about spending. Listen, everybody. I think it was Tom Hartman. Everybody's a socialist when it's convenient for them. Everybody likes government spending so long as it benefits them, and that's true for everybody that I've seen in my life. I have relatives that were big Rush Limbaugh supporters and big talk radio people. They love that unemployment check. They couldn't get enough of that stimulus, that
so
COVID
they
stimulus.
don't refuse. They didn't refuse it on grounds of
No,
principle.
no, it's like the Joe Republican. I think I mentioned this before. He goes to visit his mother in a Medicare facility, paid for by the government. He drives on the socialist roads. He banks at a bank that is backed by the federal government. He got a loan to start a small business from the Small Business Administration. He'll collect his Social Security check when he's eligible, and then he's going to turn around and vote for Ronald Reagan to get the government off his back. I mean, it's ridiculous. So I don't think anybody cares about the spending, even though and I don't think that, as you said, that $31 trillion debt, it's an abstract number. It's like, I'm sorry, nobody really cares about this.
Yeah, I think the average person. Well, but one thing it gets polarizing again because Democrats they want to tax the rich, and the Republicans want to cut some social programs that might help the poor. I don't, we can debate how effective they are. I'll play the devil advocate for Democrats. I'm all for programs, but I think Democrats have been guilty in the past. We're having these big and throw money at programs
Yeah.
without making sure how efficient they are and how
Yeah.
well they work. And some things that Social Security did a great job. The IRS, maybe they were too good. Now they've been cut back too much. So I think we have to have that happy medium. And the Freedom Caucus, aren't they pretty new though? I thought they were the ones who came in recently, and they said they were discussing with George H.W. Bush and Donald Trump because they said they were just deficit hawks in name only. I'm just point of reference. Is that true? The latest Freedom.
Yeah, I think I think you're right. I think they're relatively new batch of Republicans that are hardliners, that claim that they're hardliners, and some of them want a balanced budget amendment. They are so-called fiscal hawks in the Congress. It's almost like they're a manifestation of the Tea Party quarter. You don't hear about the Tea.
Yeah, they kind of got co-opted. We lost you. I'll keep talking. I can't hear you right now. Can you hear me, Mr. Carson? Talk.
I
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Uh, uh,
perfect. Sorry about that.
you're back again. No, it happens. Yeah, one thing. What was I about to say though? God, I just had a major point, and I just lost it when this just happened though about deficits, the budget. Let me get my frame of
Yeah,
reference again. Yeah. It's one thing. I just wish. One thing that this comes down to me. I just wish we could have health care. We discussed this before, and one thing the Republicans never talk about, which is fundamental, and no one seems to get this. And Democrats have to talk about it too, but they're more the party of like entitlement and everything. 21% of this budget will be Social Security and COLAs, discretionary spending, and then the military, we can't even. It's so big we can't even
yeah,
audit the military plus
yeah,
the
yeah,
NSA, and no one seems to tackle those red herrings either. I know, but I mean, it's right in front of our face. We talked about this with health, and easier said than done. We can't crunch the numbers. We are the richest country in the world, and for forces who are against that, people who don't believe in it, some people sincerely think it's socialism. We die in this country. We don't have a dedicated, funded health system, and like you said, it helps businesses stay alive and everything. It's just it is the biggest con game, I think, and because I really believe a lot of people just like give military anything, and don't touch my
yeah,
social on the left, don't touch my social security, and
yeah.
it's too hot. And then we have this patchwork health system.
Yeah, that's a very good point because you can't look as much as the Republicans rail against government spending and rail against so-called entitlement programs, they can't touch Social Security. They can't touch Medicare. Politically, that's a death nail for anybody in the Republican because they're seen as the party that wants to privatize, and there have been several efforts to privatize
And
Social
thank
Security.
God, I wouldn't want to leave that to the marketplace.
No, it would have been wiped out already. And look, I have friends that insist that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. I don't think it's a Ponzi scheme. I don't think Social Security has ever missed a payment. They don't have a CEO making billions of dollars
Exactly.
in Social Security. It hasn't missed. Now, could it be restructured? Could the Democrats, liberals always want to tax the wealthy, but and that's their solution. You could tax the wealthy at 100%. It's not going to solve our debt problem. However, with Social Security, Bill Gates should be paying the same percentage of his income as Bob Carson to Social
Yeah.
Security. I mean, I'm self-employed. I don't, but
Yeah,
you get my point.
but
You
the
know,
loopholes are allowed to remain because of the
yeah,
lobbyists. Yeah, every time I keep on hearing this from economists, from friends of mine who are financial lawyers, they close some loopholes, but like lobbyists get involved, pay off. Democrat or Republican, new loopholes open up that smart lawyers can take advantage of.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and and they and they and they kind of they always say it's because free market. No, it's socialism for you. That's what
yeah,
I.
and this is, if you look at budget cuts, and there's political almost stereotypes. Democrats are always spenders, which they are. But if you look at Democrats have been more effective in reducing the deficit and balancing the budget than Republicans have. Bill Clinton, Obama. I couldn't stand Obama. Obama created the model for austerity. You didn't hear about austerity until Obama came in office and
Oh
created
yeah.
that Simpson Bowles commission where they
Oh,
wanted to
and he
go.
cut government workers. Yeah, all that kind
Yeah,
of stuff. Yeah.
yeah, it was the Democrats are way more because I think politically they can get away with it a little bit more than the Republicans. So it's always the Democrats that always cut and reform welfare. And Clinton did it, the welfare, the work, and all that, the era of big government, all that stuff. And so they created the model for austerity. But the bottom line for me is politically, this is just a theater. This is a football. It goes from 1 yard to the other. It doesn't matter. Governments, we're not going to solve our debt. We're not going to cut our debt. And even if they do, even if the government does, cut our debt, these programs, people are just too. I want to say welfare, but people like the government where it works, and people want to fund the government, and people want money for their. I'm paying taxes, or you're paying tax. I want money. I want to see that. I want to see that in the form of a government program. But having said, you brought up a good point. Democrats, their solution is to spend money and just throw money at the problem at the school systems, in every sector of our economy. and that's not the answer. There needs to be more efficiency, especially in the healthcare industry,
Oh yeah,
as you know.
Obama, was not a darling of a lot of teachers unions because he
Yeah,
wanted to tie funding to metrics showing some kind of efficiency. It won't be perfect. He also said we should experiment with charter schools, and I think one dirty secret some Democrats don't want to say is yes, on the medium charter schools don't perform almost the same as public schools, but the thing is there are some high achieving charter schools, and of course there's some awful ones. We should keep those and learn from those charter schools who are doing great job in the inner cities and in the suburbs, educating children at less money at the same time. Yeah, it's
that's
not money. It's a plan. It's execution. It's accountability. I'm not saying it's building a culture, and you need good people and stuff to do that. And so charter schools, I don't mind them in that sense, but they have to be, regulated. We could change some of the state laws too, how much funding schools have to give them. But some places, when you have dysfunctional schools with dysfunctional leaders and unions that won't back down because they have to support the leaders, what else are you going to do? And that doesn't make me anti-public school. And some charter schools are awful, and they are some are ripoffs run by entrepreneur crooks too. That's true. And some are just
yeah,
get run into the ground because they're not run well, even though well-meaning.
yeah, yeah. That's a great topic. And I remember years ago, maybe we can get the teachers union, the NJEA. We should get somebody from charter who favors charter schools and somebody from the NJEA. They take a beating in the media. Teachers unions always take a beating. Any type of union takes a beating. But that's school scores, school funding, especially in New Jersey, where we have like the highest property taxes in the country, among the highest property taxes, and yet a lot of those taxes go to fund the schools. Even if you don't have a child, you're still paying, taxes to fund the school
Yeah.
systems. And we have good school systems here in New Jersey, but that's, are we getting the biggest bang for our buck? Is there a relationship between, zip codes and SAT scores? I remember I
Oh, of
spoke.
course. The size of your house, I could probably guess your reading scores compared to
Yeah,
a small
right.
house.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
I mean,
There's a
unfortunately, yeah,
socioeconomic component to all this, to test scores. There's arguably a racial component to all this, and that's so many interesting avenues of debate when it comes to the school systems
and
and
it's
how
not all
corrupt.
socioeconomic too. There's also family value. Some groups can come and do
Yeah,
quite well because of their culture of education and pushing it. And I've always said, let's study what they do and how things work. One thing
yeah,
I found, and it's just a theory, we're kind of segueing. One reason Chinese students did so well when I was in college, a lot of them were first generation or mainline. They got in study groups.
mm,
I didn't think about it. I didn't really get in study. Maybe near the end when I had a test, they got in study groups all year and they supported each other. You have 10 different learning styles, different knowledge bases of knowledge when they're studying engineering, math, science, English, and they worked with each other besides working hard. Things like that. I mean, there are ways you can do it, but it's also a mentality and it's a lifestyle. And of course, I mean,
yeah.
if you don't eat enough and your parents are crackhead, whatever, and you don't have a safety net, you can't get a tutor, it's going to be harder.
Yeah, yeah, these are great topics, great discussions, and definitely subject matter for future episodes of Wicked Politics. Um, let's move on here. I'm not sure.
We
I'm sure
have
you
only
have.
4 minutes and 43 seconds, so I got to warn you.
Wow, time flies when you're having fun. So
Yes.
what do you want to talk about? Do you have any pet peeves, any topics that have crossed your mind since the last
I
time we've
always
been
go back
on?
to the woke insanity. I see something in Princeton. I don't know how much time. You know, maybe I'll save it for another day because we're getting really low. But I'll talk about again, which still scares me on the left. I don't think it can be fixed. I still see Trump and the election deniers as a fundamental threat to our country. But I'm still disgusted as a liberal by seeing on our college campuses some of the self-imposed censorship, letting the students run the asylum, it's not all college. I think it's mostly East Coast and West Coast, and I'll talk about that more. A timeline how this kind of came about, but I just see and
Yeah,
hear it in Princeton, and it's like, oh my God, you're letting this happen. I feel like it's in Argentina. No one dies, but your career can be ruined by someone if they don't They don't deem you socially aware enough, or you say something. It's bad, but that has to be for another time. What about you? What do you want to say? We about 2 minutes left.
This kind of somewhat relates to what you're talking about, the wokeism in the college campuses and whatnot. I want to talk about corruption, about media bias. Listen, I try to be fair. I try to be an independent. You had the Durham report that came out that basically said that this whole thing was the whole Russia gate was a hoax, that the people that arranged this knew that there was no collusion between Russia and the Trump administration, regardless of whether you like Trump, regardless of what, the media didn't cover that. The media didn't, they completely whitewashed that. I thought that was a big story that took place. I think it was yesterday or the day before. Trump and his administration has been cleared of any Russia collusion. And I was saying that even when I had my own podcast with Christopher Driscoll, the election boycott advocates, we were saying that 5-6 years ago.
Well, let me just interrupt though. True, because to me, Trump fits the Moscow playbook to be manipulated, so he doesn't have to actively work with Moscow. But I did see him with my own eyes, and we only got 2 minutes. And I'll make it short. Side with Putin over our own government. I did see him try to blackmail the Ukraine to get something on Hunter Biden, putting foreign policy in peril. So that sucks. But anyway, we only got 2 minutes to go. So again, tell us about yourself, and I'll go first again. Breathing with Bierman, the podcast on Facebook, YouTube. You're going to see Wicked Politics. Hopefully I'll be able to download this. I'm pretty busy tonight, but by tonight, and then I'll gussy it up and send it to you. And what about you? You got 1 minute.
Yeah, listen, like I said, if you want to friend me on Facebook, facebook.com/Bob Carson MMA, Instagram.com/Bob Carson MMA. I'm spending less time on those sites, but if you reach out to me via message, I'll be able to respond. And make sure to check us out on YouTube. Just type in Wicked Politics, or go to Adam's YouTube page. That's where this show is being hosted now, on YouTube, and I'll post it on my Facebook page at all. Thank you to everybody that's listened and chimed in. We appreciate that you appreciate our discussions here and our efforts here.
And give us some more shout outs. It inspires me, motivates me to keep going. Thank you.
Yes.
And have a good night.
Take care. Happy weekend. Happy Friday.